OneUI 6.1 has just launched on the Galaxy S24 series. It's a lot bigger of an update than what we were expecting from Samsung, especially with all the new features that the S24 series are getting. So what is the difference? Well, let's go through one by one the new things that you can find on 6.1 and compare them to what isn't there on 6.0. Daniel here from SamMobile TV. This is OneUI 6.1 versus OneUI 6. So now that we have the new S24 series, usually what Samsung do is they release a 0.1 update to their latest OneUI version. It's a good trend and I hope it continues. With OneUI 6.1, there is immediately a new feature that you will notice, and whether or not it's to do with the new displays on the S24, it's something that greets you the second you look at your phone. With OneUI 6.1, Samsung has introduced a new, I say new, but we have seen it somewhere before, always on display feature. You can now use your lock screen as the background of your always on display. So effectively it will dim your lock screen down and it allows you to put in that as your wallpaper for AOD. It can be a bit confusing. You might think it is your lock screen on, but there is a nice transition from always on display to lock screen to wallpaper that you'll notice with the animations that Samsung have implemented. Part of the always on display as well is Samsung has enabled lock screen widgets to also be displayed on your always on display. So you can see things like your battery, you can see things like the weather, and then it goes into the always on display as well. And that forms part of the animation transition that you see. What else is in always on display is if you have your wallpaper that has an object in it, like a person, you can choose to cut out the background of the wallpaper for always on display. So the person will be on the AOD, but the background behind the person won't. So it cuts it out. Still will transition to the wallpaper that has the background and then into lock screen. But I think that's quite neat and a clever little option to allow you to have still black on always on display, whilst also still retaining the wallpaper. Sticking with display, in the display settings on the S24, you will find a new adaptive color tone setting. This adaptive color tone actually uses the cameras, the front and the rear, to look at the ambient lighting around you. It will then determine what is the best color tone for the environment you're in and display that on your screen. It might make it a bit yellower, it might make it a bit cooler, all depends on where you are and what you're doing. This is not present in OneUI 6. You might see this though jump into the next future versions of OneUI on the last year's models, for example. Something that I noticed sticking again in the display settings area is Samsung have removed the option for the nav bar to be hidden, which is quite strange. So previously, when you are setting up the navigation gestures, you could turn off the nav bar. So the gestures are still there, but the gesture hint, you can hide it. Samsung have pretty much revamped this menu, so that option's gone. Gone as well are the options to be able to use the old gestures that Samsung implemented years ago, which is a bottom left, a middle, and a bottom right swipe to activate what the navigation bar used to do. It's strange, but I think they're just trying to clean it up and make it a little bit more easier for consumers to jump into gestures. And there's another reason for it too, but we'll jump into that when we talk about all the new AI stuff that's part of OneUI 6.1. Before we move away from the display features of OneUI 6, it's important to recognize that Samsung have really worked hard to optimize animations in OneUI 6.1. As you can see here, the fluidity of 6.1 with opening apps, closing apps, it's not something that you'll notice immediately, but as you use the phone, and especially if you've come from a phone that's using OneUI 6 or previous, you'll definitely notice the speed and the fluidity. You can see slowed down side by side. There's just more of a nice fluidness about OneUI 6.1, and I hope that Samsung can bring those optimizations to previous generations as well. But side by side, you can see the difference. Samsung introduced a feature not too long ago called Protect Battery, where you can limit the charge of the phone to 85%, so you can increase the longevity of the phone's battery over many years. It was a good stepping stone, but they've now enabled 3 extra toggles. So you can have a basic one, you can have one that will jump between 100 and 95%, so when you're sleeping, it will never sort of go below a certain level. And then there's the standard one, which they've reduced to 80% instead of 85. These just add in a little bit of extra features that you can customize, so you can protect your battery how you want to. The 80% and the 85% one is limiting. So the other ways, at least you still can get to 100% and have the top level, and you don't have to sacrifice 15% of your battery. Now let's get into the camera. Now we'll probably save like the hardware sort of differences between the S24 Ultra and S23 Ultra for another time. And as well, some of the camera features that are in OneUI 6.1 are probably only allowed to be in 6.1 because of the new hardware on the S24 series. But I'll break down a couple of them, some that you might end up finding back on previous generations. The first is you can choose now in single take to take photos from any camera on the back, which I think is really clever, and it gives you more options when you are capturing single take photos, because you're not just limited to one camera. If someone's far away from you and you want to take single take, it can capture it from that distance. In here too, in the More tab is dual recording. This seems to have replaced director's view, so I'm not sure what that means for director's view in the previous models. But the difference being is that with dual recording is you're not just limited to recording from the front and the rear at the same time. You can record 2 rear cameras at the same time. The only kicker is you can't switch as you're recording, but you can now do it in 4K. So you could choose the wide and the telephoto at 4K 30, and you can save both as separate files. I actually really like this. In OneUI 6.1, Samsung have removed super slow-mo. So the one that can take 960 FPS and then slow it down drastically isn't here. I don't know what their plans are for OneUI 6.1 in last year's phones and previous to that as well, but in the S24 series and OneUI 6.1, super slow-mo is gone. Bit strange. But in the slow-mo settings, Samsung have enabled UHD at 120 FPS. Now that is probably a hardware thing, but just to know that it is capable of doing it. Tying into camera slightly is stuff to do with the gallery. Samsung have put in a really important feature here. And again, I think this might be an S24 only 6.1 feature, but we'll see in the future. But in the gallery, Samsung have turned on Gallery HDR. So with photos taken by a Samsung phone, it can boost the colors and boost the dynamic range to make the photo displayed on the screen a lot nicer. I actually did compare this to the S23 Ultra using the same photo taken with the S24 Ultra, and you can absolutely see a difference in the shadows, especially of this building that I shot. The shadows on the S24 Ultra are a little bit lifted, and you can see everything a lot more dynamically, whereas the S23 Ultra is a little bit flat and not quite as nice as what it is on the S24. Within the gallery too, something that ties into super slow-mo or slow-mo from before is when you're watching a video back in the gallery, you can instantly slow a part of that video down just so you can get a preview of what it looks like when it is slow. It's called instant slow-mo, which is pretty accurate, where you hold down on the video and it will slow down the portion of that video that whilst you are holding it down. When you release it, it goes back to normal, but just allows you to preview what that bit might look like slowed down. So you can then go in afterwards and edit it and slow it down yourself. It's quite clever and could be a lot of fun, especially if you're showing videos back to people. You might want to have a bit of fun with it. Another part of OneUI 6.1, and this is more of a thing that they've done with Google, is Quick Share and Nearby Share have merged to stay Quick Share. And you might not see it on the phone straight away, or there is a notification to let you know. But when you hit Quick Share and you've got a Samsung phone around you, the other Samsung phone thinks it's Nearby Share because it comes up with a notification saying that a phone nearby is sharing, which is the Nearby Share signature. Benefits of this is you're going to be able to use this with any Android phone, not just Samsung to Samsung. Okay, that's a lot of the smaller little stuff that's deep in the settings that I've managed to dig out with OneUI 6.1. Now let's get into the hardcore stuff. Galaxy AI. It's not yet known what Galaxy AI functions are going to be brought back generations, so S23 and previous, but OneUI 6.1 is stacked full of AI features. I'm not going to go into all of them here. We actually have another video planned where I deep dive a little bit more into what Galaxy AI is and how it actually can transform your smartphone usage in a couple of different ways. What I want to show off here is some of the stuff that's built into things like the gallery and the keyboard. With the gallery, Samsung have built in generative edits. When you go to edit a photo, there is a new button that appears in the edit function. It's the AI button. You press this and it brings up generative edit. In here, there's a couple of different things you can do. The main one is you can change the angle of a crooked photo and then press generate to fill in the gaps. This is cloud-based, so it's not being done on the phone. And it does work quickly enough, and then Samsung will do its best guess to fill in the gaps of what's missing. In here as well, you can also select objects and you can either erase them, move them, or make them bigger. When you do either of those things and hit generate, again, Samsung's processing will try and fill in the gaps as best as it can and make the photo look as natural as possible. When you hit save on a generative edit, Samsung will put a little watermark in the bottom left corner. It's the 3 stars of the AI logo. This is to let you know, and also anyone you share it with, no matter what platform, that this is an AI generated photo. There's also a bunch of AI stuff that Samsung have put into the keyboard. Now this is processed on the phone itself. So it is taking advantage of the advanced NPU in the new processors on the Galaxy S24 series. What I really like about these options that have been provided is they can really transform how you communicate. Firstly, there's translate. So when you press the little button before, you press chat translation and it will bring up a little box. What you can do here is there's a couple of different messaging platforms that this works in: Samsung Messages, Google Messages, WhatsApp, just to start with. You enter your language and then enter the language in the settings that you want to translate to. And when you send the message, it'll actually just send them the translated version. So all they're reading is what their native language is. And when they send back their language, it'll auto-translate in your messaging app and show you your language. There's settings that you can toggle to make sure it only shows your language and not theirs if you don't want to be confused. But it's very clever and works very quickly. The one though that I'm very interested in is chat styles. If you've ever sent an aggressive message or something that's taken out of context because you can't really convey tone quite well over text, you'll know that this will probably work for you. Whenever you write a message out, you can select this chat styles button and it will then generate multiple different styles and tones for you to swap it out with. So it gives you back the original, and then if you go through the rest of the list, there's professional, there's polite, there's social. So if you wanted to generate a social media tagline or post, this will help you there. And then you just swap it out and send it. Casual is probably the one I'd go with the most, but it's nice that there's a lot of different styles that you can play around with. And spelling and grammar. Now you're probably thinking, oh, keyboards can do that now. Keyboards can't swap out entire paragraphs. So if you've got a paragraph with multiple errors in it, the spelling and grammar will just select the entire paragraph and actually generate the right spelling and grammar and then allow you to copy and paste that paragraph in, replace it. Means it's, rather than having to go through each individual error, this will go through all of it. Along with the translation theme, Samsung have built Live Translate into phone calls as well. So if you're talking with someone who you know speaks a different language, you can set their language up, and when you call them, it will translate their words into your language and your words into theirs over the voice call. It's nuts. It'll play a little prompt and let them know that the call is being translated. So then you talk after that and then it plays their language. The thing I really like with this is in the settings, you can do a couple of different things. You can turn off the receiver hearing your voice and the translated voice, and you can turn off hearing their voice and the translated voice. So you can only hear the translated if you wish. What I really like in here though, that Samsung is clever enough to know that you're not going to speak the same language to everyone. Some people might speak Spanish, some people might speak Italian. So per contact, you can actually set the language of that person. So when you call them, it automatically will change Live Translate to their language. Genius. Samsung have also built in some really cool summarize features. So in Samsung's web browser, Samsung Internet, and Samsung Notes, if you have a body of text in there, there's a toolbar in both apps that allows you to summarize the body of text that you're reading, whether it be a news article, whether it be meeting notes. You can summarize it into key bullet points and then do what you wish with it. Copy and paste it into an email, into another note file, yours to do with. I really appreciate this, and I'm definitely going to be using this as part of my sort of YouTube workflow and even other things, just reading football articles. I'm super excited to start using this properly as now that I've got the phones in my hand. There's another video, like I said, that I'm going to deep dive into all the AI stuff, but it's definitely formed a core part of OneUI 6.1. What we don't know yet is what is going to move across or down to last year's flagships and beyond, but we know for sure on OneUI 6.1 on the S24, they're all there. So if you want more S24 coverage, please subscribe to SamMobile. This is the place you want to be for all Samsung coverage in general. We've got a host of CES videos that when we went over there, and a host of S24 coverage to come as well. Also go check out our website, sammobile.com. That is going to be your place for updated news, pricing availability in your country, software, everything. That's where you want to go. If you'd like to pick up an S24 for yourself, use the link in the description. Otherwise, we'll see you next time. Thanks.